Buy, sell, or hold after the Giants did what they needed to do and swept the Colorado Rockies in 4 games. I'll give my opinion on what I think they should do next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I've been hosting Locked On Giants for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. And coming up on today's show, we are going to get into the question, buy, sell, or hold, after the Giants did what, I just said they needed to do in order, if you have any interest in this team winning. I know there's a lot of fans out there who would prefer that they sell, right? But I'm not among them. I never ever want a season where you have a chance for the team to, it's just given where the Giants are. It'd be one thing, 2019 when Farhan Zaidi was here for the first time in his first trade deadline, and they sold, but they didn't sell their 2 best pieces in Will Smith and Madison Bumgarner. It was Bruce Bochy's final season as manager of the Giants, and so they didn't fully sell, but they did sell somewhat. But that team clearly wasn't going places, but this team I think is different. And so they came into the season with legitimate expectations of being a playoff team. It wasn't just hope that fueled that. It was projection systems, expert analysis, and on this show we predicted that they would be a team that won in the mid to upper 80s in terms of games won. So the fact that they win these 4 games against Colorado, first of all, I don't care. I do care somewhat, I guess, but the fact that it's against Colorado, it's not easy to sweep a 4-game series. It's just not. And it's not easy to win both games of a doubleheader. And they did it. They did both of those things. And so to me, I think this is a situation where it's complicated because on the one hand, they're 2 games under 500. They're only 3.5 back in the wild card. There's a chance. There's several teams are playing today and the Giants are not. The Giants could be either, if I'm looking at this correctly, they could be 3 back, 3.5 back, or 4 back. Those are the 3 possibilities by tomorrow, Tuesday's 3 p.m. Pacific trade deadline. And the Giants don't play until nighttime tomorrow, and so they have no more games left. So this is a team, the fact that they went out there and they just did this, and they're all gushing about that they have something special in the clubhouse, and I don't know. I just when you're in the race and you've committed so many resources, they spent more than they've spent in a long time. They're close to the 2nd luxury tax threshold. I just don't see them tearing it all apart when they have a shot, and they certainly have a shot. And over the weekend, they legitimately increased their playoff odds, according to the likes of Fangraphs, from about 10% to 20%. So they doubled their playoff odds. 1 in 5, is not so bad. 1 in 5 probabilities happen 1 out of every 5 times. It's not that uncommon. And so I don't know. And then there's just the simple fact that they have their team coming together now and a soft part of the schedule coming up. And so as I'm speaking here, I think I'm convincing myself more and more that they just won't sell off all their best players, who are basically, of course, like the good news is some of their best players definitely would never be traded, like Patrick Bailey and Logan Webb. When you have like good young talent that's under team control for like 4, 5, 6 years, like the Giants now have with the likes of Bailey and Webb and Kyle Harrison and, Hayden Birdsong. We'll get into what he did, but it's more the shorter term pieces like a Blake Snell or a Michael Conforto, potentially like a Mike Yastrzemski or a Taylor Rogers. It's these kind of guys, and specifically Snell. Like he would be arguably, like he could have a chance if the Giants traded him, that he could be the best pitcher available on the market. And so this market has been kind of wild. Like it's been very active, and the fact that the Giants haven't done anything yet, I don't care, because I think they needed to see what happened over the weekend, because if they had like lost 3 out of 4 or something and their position in the standings was significantly worse, because they're 3.5 back, but if they had lost like 3 more games, they would have been 6.5 back. So instead they're 3.5 back, and that makes a big difference. I really feel like they kind of needed to sweep this series. That's a tough ask, and they did it. They went out there and swept the series. And so they, in the locker room, like they deserve in the clubhouse credit for being able to rise to the occasion. I know it's the Rockies. I know they've dominated the Rockies at home over the last many years, but nonetheless, it's a major league team. It's not easy to do. And so while you could potentially get a very good return for a Blake Snell, who had a historically good start in the first game of the doubleheader on Saturday with 15 strikeouts in 6 innings. And we'll get into that a little bit later on, and how great the Giants starters were in this series, and how it bodes well for them in the last 2 months if they keep the team together. It's tough. It is a tough call to make if you're running this organization. Like, do you punt on a season when you have a shot at it, or do you kind of just stand pat, or do you double down and add to this team? The question is, if they were to not sell, do they stand pat or do they add? And then, the first question is sell or not. And then the second question is, if not selling, then are you just kind of holding for the most part, or are you making significant additions? And I've heard a lot of people have like written to me and said that the worst thing they could do is do nothing. And I kind of disagree. I think that this, of all years, is kind of the year when it would actually make the most sense to do nothing. Not nothing, like obviously if you can make little improvements and shore up certain spots here and there. And coming up in a minute, we'll talk about what specific areas I think they could afford to improve in. It's not that many, to be honest. Like, I'm not saying they're the best team ever, but I'm just saying, where exactly are you going to make those upgrades? Because they've got solid players kind of throughout most of the roster. And so my opinion is that it's tough, but I don't believe in giving up on a season unless you're out of it, like really out of it. And this team is not out of it, and they've got all these guys coming back. Robbie Ray was really good making his first start of the year, and he's back. Alex Cobb is very close to being back. Blake Snell is finally pitching like Blake Snell. And they've got a bunch of young players performing. Like, there's just not a lot of reason to not believe in the capability of this team. I think, going back to what I was originally saying, they've underperformed. this year. And that's what the team, to a player that's what they're saying. It's like, we feel like we have underperformed our talent level, but that they feel good about the next couple months with all the guys they have coming back and with the talent that they have, and that they could play better. They definitely could play better than they did in the first 100-ish games of the season. So coming up in just a minute, more specifically about what I think they should do. And also we'll get into the historic dominance of what the Giants were able to do pitching-wise against the Rockies this weekend, and if they can thread the needle here. That's the question I have. We've also got some tough news to talk about later on as well. But all of that coming up in just a minute, and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Stitch Fix. Now, I just, hate shopping for clothes on my own. I'm not good at it. And with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. I just give my stylists my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want, how I want, no subscription required, and they send 5 just for me pieces plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. They make it so easy, Stitch Fix. I don't like to shop, as I said, and they save me the time and effort. Plus I get outfits that make me look and feel really good. It's style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up, and offer does not include kids' fixes. All right, as promised, we are going to get into what I think the Giants should do, and can they thread the needle, and also some sad news to pass along. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we are going to be, I'm going to be talking with Sully from Locked On MLB today. Actually, he's also the host of Locked On A's now. He does both MLB and A's, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming series, and that's going to premiere or debut or come out early on Tuesday. But then Tuesday is the trade deadline, and so I do anticipate doing a show later tomorrow after the trade deadline has passed on Tuesday. So probably 2 episodes coming out tomorrow, and one should come out early, the one with Sully. So just be on the lookout for that. Now, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, the question about what the Giants should do, is probably hotly debated. I mean, I might put out a Twitter poll. It's, things are not 100% settled in the sense that the teams ahead of the Giants in the wild card standings, several of them do play tonight. In fact, all of the teams ranging from the 3rd wild card team all the way down to the Giants, and there's 4 teams there. The Mets are the 3rd wildcard team currently at 55 and 50. They play tonight. The D-backs are a half game behind the Mets. They play tonight. And by the way, the Mets playing at home against the Twins. The Diamondbacks playing at home against the Nationals. And the Cardinals are 1 game back of the Mets, and they're playing at home against the Rangers. The Pirates are 2 back of the Mets, and they're playing at the Houston Astros. And then there are the Giants, that next team, at 3.5 back, and they're off. And so all those teams, none of them are playing each other. They could conceivably all lose. So the Giants could gain a half a game on all of them, or they could lose a half a game on all of them, or most likely some kind of mix in between. But the Mets and the D-backs being the most important in terms of where the Giants will be in terms of games back in the standings. The best case scenario is 3 games back. And I think it would just be hard to justify, let's just tear this whole thing down because we're 3 games back. And in terms of passing teams in the standings, I've gotten a lot of questions about this, like, oh, but yeah, they're only 3.5 back, but they'd have to pass 4 teams. So what? Like, they're close to, they could pass 3 of those teams this week. I mean, it's just not the most crazy thing at all. When you're 3.5 back, they're 2.5 back of St. Louis. So and St. Louis is 2 spots ahead of them. So I really mean they could be ahead of St. Louis and Pittsburgh like within 2 days, And so I don't know. I just don't think. Plus St. Louis, I mean, they have a very bad run differential, so they've kind of outperformed their run differential by a ton, like 7 wins, minus 48 run differential. They've basically allowed about as many runs as the Giants, but they've scored like 44 fewer runs and allowed actually they've allowed 12 fewer runs, but they've scored 44 fewer runs. Anyway, and the Pirates, I mean, yeah, they're having a kind of cool season for them, but I think the Giants are better than the Pirates. And so it's not hard to see them passing those 2 teams. And then you're dealing with potentially a race between the Braves, the Padres, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, and the Giants. There'd be 5 teams for 3 spots. We're not there yet, and they could sell, and then maybe it becomes a moot point. But yeah, so threading the needle and like, what do I think they should do? I think that there's a case to make that you maybe do trade some pieces, but also add, you do a little of both. And that is what they did in 2019 too. And it was a different circumstance then, but they still did it nonetheless. They had a surplus of good bullpen arms, and they traded a lot of them. And they did, Farhan Zaidi, when he's made trades, they've almost always been like either very successful or like kind of irrelevant, but a lot of very good trades. I mean, they acquired, first of all, like Robbie Ray, that trade already, to me, that trade looked good at the time, and it's looking even better now. We discussed that the other day. They traded for Mike Yastrzemski for nothing. Tyler Erb. They traded for Lamont Wade Jr. for nothing. Sean Anderson. They traded for Tyro Estrada for cash. Those are kind of the main one. The getting out from underneath the Darren Ruff contract, the Mark Melancon contract, and getting like Tristan Beck and other players in return as well. They have just done a good job with trades. They also got the A's to take on Ross Stripling, which was kind of wild. So yeah, I mean, they've just kind of not made a trade that's really bit them, and they've made a lot of trades that have bit other teams. And so when they do make deals, I would anticipate that they'll be good. And so like I could see a scenario where you trade a Michael Conforto, for example, and Conforto is making $18 million this year. These salaries are prorated at this point. Like he's already been paid for 2/3 of the year, and so it would be like $5 million remaining or so, $6 million remaining or so that Conforto is owed. And there's a need for and shortage of left-handed bats on the market. And there's also the reliever market has been very hot. Like the returns have been best, I think, for relievers so far. And so the Giants could, it's not totally out of the question. You could possibly dangle a Camilo Doval or something. A lot of people, I don't love the idea of selling low on a player like this who's been really good, except this year has not been so good. But I do trust that this front office, like I said, with their tendency to not make bad trades, I know some will. I know that some of you are thinking of the Prelander, Baroa, Donnie Walton trade, but what has Baroa done so far at the major league level? What has Walton done? But what has Baroa done? And it's been a struggle for him with command, and I don't know how much of a future there is. We'll see. That one just remains to be seen. But if that's the one you're pointing to as like a disastrous trade, which some anonymous scouts have called it the worst trade of that year, which I think is ridiculous, to be perfectly frank, then they really haven't made that many bad trades. Right now, Baroa is in the White Sox organization and has a 6.69 ERA as a reliever in AAA in 40 and a third innings. 6.69 with a walk rate of 15%. And just being a reliever and just having a ton of walks, he's pitched 2 major league innings. I don't know. So anyway, if that's your big disastrous trade, then you haven't seen a disastrous trade. So anyway, but players that I think could get traded do include Michael Conforto. It's guys who are like veteran players who just aren't that impactful, but could get you something in return and or free up playing time for younger players who are deserving of it. And in the outfield, there is a question of, are you better off just holding a player like Michael Conforto versus getting rid of him? And then because who plays the position? And you could say, Luis Matos. But Matos has struggled so badly this season in the major leagues. And so Conforto, as much as he's not really been an impact player, he has been significantly better than Luis Matos. And then you could also look at the bullpen. Like I said, Camilo Doval, I think that's less likely. But if you could get some huge return for Camilo Doval, when you have a guy like Ryan Walker, I think capable of stepping into that late inning role. You've got Jordan Hicks now in the bullpen. So there's you've basically added a potentially impact reliever. Jordan Hicks was very good as a reliever last year. And now he's in the bullpen for the Giants. So you could possibly withstand that blow and recoup a lot of talent in return. It's something worth exploring. And like I said, Conforto, and then you look at a Tyler, probably not Tyler Rogers, but a Taylor Rogers, who's making $12 million this year. So that would be only $4 million remaining on that contract for this year, and then $12 million next year. And he's put up very good numbers, but they just don't use him in huge situations. He's got a 2.16 ERA on the season, 3.05 expected ERA. There certainly would be a market for a Taylor Rogers, and then you've cleared up, that $12 million for next year that you could reallocate to something maybe more important than a reliever you don't really use in high leverage situations anyway. So that's I think Conforto, Rogers, those are guys. Wilmer Flores, I hate to say it. I mean, he is injured right now, but it's these veteran players on these shorter term deals that aren't the impact ones like Blake Snell that I think if you do see the Giants quote unquote selling, I feel like that's more likely what you could see. You could potentially see an Alex Cobb or something traded. He is a free agent at the end of the year. He's going to be 37 soon if he's not 37 already. He is going to turn 37 in October. And so, maybe the last year of Cobb's career, and there's a market for pitching, and he's been really good when healthy. And, teams certainly are aware of the fact that he's ready. He's almost ready to come back. And the Giants have seen, this is what I'm saying, when you have a young player like a Hayden Birdsong who's been so impressive, maybe you want to open up a spot for him and you feel like you're not losing too much. And so I think you could see that this year, the threading of the needle like that. So coming up in just a minute, we'll wrap this all up and unfortunately deliver some very sad news as well about the much too soon passing of a former Giants reliever. We'll get into that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, here we go. We're going to... I failed to mention the historic pitching performances, so we'll get into that. We'll pass along some very sad news and wrap up this. This will be the... Well, I guess there will be an episode early tomorrow, but... And I really should be refreshing Twitter as I'm recording here because there could be major news and I wouldn't even know about it. And this trade deadline has been wild so far. And so anyway, coming up tomorrow, like I said, everydayers, you'll get 2 episodes tomorrow with a morning one coming out with Sully from Locked On A's. Justin Turner was traded to the Mariners. I just am seeing now from the Blue Jays. And anyway, then after the deadline passes, unless the Giants do absolutely nothing, then we might wait till the next day. But if they do any moves, we'll have a second episode out for you tomorrow. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. A reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So there's a lot to say about how historically great the Giants were from a starting pitching standpoint in this series against the Rockies. And again, I get it. It's the Rockies. But also, the players talk like this. I'm going to talk like this. It's Major League Baseball. These are Major League caliber players. They're all exceptionally good players. Even every player on the Rockies is exceptionally talented at baseball. I mean, it's crazy. To play college baseball, you have to be insanely good. And then to be good at good enough at college baseball to get drafted, you have to be insanely good. And then once you're in professional baseball, you're just you're among the most elite players in the world at that point. And then there are plenty of guys who fail in the minors. But then everybody who's in the majors has typically had success at the highest levels of the minors. So I don't want to hear it really about it's the Rockies, they stink. They're major league players. And Blake Snell struck out 15 Rockies in 6 innings. And it's the most strikeouts in the first 6 innings of a game in the expansion era. The most is 16 by Randy Johnson. And Blake Snell is second with 15. Randy Johnson also had 15, and so did Roger Clemens and David Cone. And so there's this number being thrown around that it's the most strikeouts in a start of 6 or fewer innings ever, and that's true. But also, I was more interested in this. Has anyone ever had 15 strikeouts in 6 innings? Regardless of if they ended their game there or kept going? And the answer is yes. Only Randy Johnson on September 27th, 1992, had more strikeouts through 6 innings than Blake Snell had in Game 1 against the Rockies on Saturday. So, that just goes to show you, this is not just, it's the Rockies. It's no, that's just how great Blake Snell was in this start, because that just doesn't happen. It's happened only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times since 1961 that a player has had 15 strikeouts through 6 innings. 5 times since 1961. And so you want to give this guy up? I get it. it's appealing in the sense that you could get a lot in return. But at the same time, if he's pitching like this, then he could also carry you to the postseason. And if you make the postseason and you've got Logan Webb and you've got Blake Snell and then you've got Robbie Ray and you've got maybe Alex Cobb, probably Alex Cobb, you've got Kyle Harrison, you've got Hayden Birdsong. I'm even sure that I'm forgetting somebody. Like, their rotation has the potential to be great. And so anyway, Hayden Birdsong followed that up with an 8 strikeout performance. Kyle Harrison in game 1 set the tone with an 11 strikeout performance. He was fantastic. He's 22 years old. So the rotation was just historically great. There was, it was like the most, there were so many notes that came out. The most pitching strikeouts by a team in a doubleheader. In 1965, the Phillies had 31. And in 1958, the Phillies had 31. And the Giants on Saturday had 30. And it tied the Nationals and Phillies from 1975. So it was the most in a game, in a doubleheader since 1975 with 30 strikeouts. And just in the series, I think I don't have that note because there were so many notes. I'm like losing them in the mix here. I think it was the most strikeouts the Giants have ever had in a 4-game series, and it was up there with the most ever in a 4-game series. So it was just a historically dominant weekend, and the bats were pretty good too. It wasn't just the pitching. So anyway, now we've got to pass along the sad news, which is that former Giants reliever Reyes Maranta passed away in a car accident in the Dominican Republic last night. And the Giants have released the following statement. The San Francisco Giants are deeply saddened by the news of the passing of former reliever Reyes Maranta, who passed away yesterday in the Dominican Republic. Maranta made his major league debut with the Giants in 2017. He pitched 4 seasons in San Francisco from 2017 to 19, and in 2021. He was 31 years old. Our thoughts, prayers, and deepest condolences go out to the Maranta family. And so I echo that sentiment. We at Locked On echo that sentiment. It's just extremely sad. Just 31 years old, gone way too soon, and seemed like a good guy, and by all accounts was just a really good guy. And the roads in the Dominican Republic are apparently quite dangerous at times, and it's just tragic. And my heart goes out to the Maranta family, and it's just very, very sad to lose a young man like this at this age. And so, just in case you weren't aware, just to pass that news along, wanted to give that to you and let you know that has occurred, and it's just tremendously sad news to report. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow, talking with Sully in the morning, Sully from Locked On A's, previewing that A's series, probably also talking trade deadline. And then if the Giants do anything at all of significance, we'll have another episode after the deadline tomorrow, which is at 3 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday. And a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. And for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on X at Ben Kaspick, K-A-S-P-I-C-K. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow, hopefully twice. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. All of this was just my opinion. They could go a totally other direction and just say, hey, the market is so good for sellers that we're just going to sell all these guys, and they could do that. But my opinion is, if you're in it, if you've got a shot, go for it because it's worth the potential reward. Anyway, thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.